They call it loyalty. You wear it like a badge of honor, sticking by their side through the worst, never leaving, never complaining. You call yourself a loyal friend, a devoted partner, a dedicated employee. But let's strip away the romance and look at the ugly truth. You aren't loyal. You are just dependent. You don't stay because of your noble character. You stay because you are terrified of being alone. Do not confuse your lack of options with virtue. Let that settle, because somewhere inside you, something just flinched. And that flinch, that small, uncomfortable twitch in your chest, that is the feeling of a comfortable lie being pulled out from under you. You've been telling yourself this story for years, that you are one of the good ones, that you value commitment, that your willingness to endure pain for someone else is evidence of your moral superiority. It isn't. It is evidence of your fear. And the cruelest part is that society built the cage, handed you the lock, and then applauded you for staying inside it. Here is what nobody will say to your face. Loyalty without options is not loyalty. It is captivity with a prettier name. Think about every relationship you have ever called loyal. The friendship where you are always the one calling first. The job you have given a decade of your life to, defending it at dinner parties while they haven't given you a raise in 3 years. The partner you stayed with, through behavior that would make a stranger walk away in 10 minutes. Ask yourself one question. If tomorrow you woke up with absolute financial freedom, a thriving social world, a list of people actively choosing you, would you still be in those same rooms, sitting at that same table, wearing that same quiet suffering like a crowd? You already know the answer. You have always known. The psychology behind this is not flattering. Researchers call it the sunk cost fallacy, but that term is far too clinical and forgiving for what is actually happening.
Loyalty is rare.
What is actually happening is this. You have confused investment with identity. You have stayed so long, endured so much, and built so much
Loyalty
of your self-concept
is rare.
around your role in that relationship or that job, that leaving would not just mean losing them. It would mean losing the version of yourself that justified all that suffering. And that is a loss your ego is not equipped to survive. So instead, you rebrand the imprisonment. You call it devotion. You call it ride or die. You post about it, you wear it, and the world claps for you. That is the part that should terrify you most. Society has constructed an entire moral framework designed to keep powerless people comfortable in their powerlessness. Think about the language. Real ones stay. Loyalty is rare. I don't leave when things get hard. These are not philosophies. These are the mantras of people who have never been forced to examine why they stay. They are the psychological equivalent of a prisoner decorating his cell and calling it interior design. The bars are still there. You are still locked in. You have just learned to call the bars something noble. Now, here's the concept that will genuinely disturb you if you let it. Dependency wears 3 masks, and you have worn all 3 without ever recognizing your own reflection. The first mask is emotional dependency. You stay because the thought of their absence creates a specific kind of panic that has nothing to do with love and everything to do with the terror of an unstructured self. Who are you without this person? You don't actually know. And that not knowing is the leash. The second mask is financial dependency, and this one is almost too obvious to mention, except that people continue to confuse economic necessity with moral commitment every single day. You don't stay at that job because you believe in the mission. You stay because the alternative requires a courage you haven't yet built. The third mask is identity dependency, and this is the one that runs deepest, because your sense of who you are has become so fused with your role in this dynamic that the relationship is no longer something you have. It is something you are. Removing it would feel like removing a limb. None of that is loyalty. All of it is architecture. Psychological architecture designed to keep you in place. And here is the question you should be sitting with right now. If the person you are so loyal to truly knew, that the only reason you stayed was because you were afraid, would they feel honored? Or would they feel exactly what they should feel? Settled for. True loyalty is one of the rarest things that exists in human behavior. Not because humans lack character, but because true loyalty requires a prerequisite that almost nobody possesses: genuine options. Loyalty is only meaningful when it is chosen freely, when the person staying has looked at the door, seen it wide open, felt the wind from 10 other directions on their face, and still turned back and said, "I choose this." Everything else is just inertia dressed in virtue's clothing. Everything else is just gravity. You are not loyal, you are stationary, and there is a vast, uncomfortable difference between the two. The ancient Stoics understood something about this that modern psychology has almost completely lost. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a man who stays in a burning house and calls it honor is not honorable. He is simply a man who cannot imagine life outside a burning house. The modern version of that burning house has your name on the lease. It has your history on its walls. It has your routines, your patterns, your identity woven into its structure so thoroughly that you have stopped asking whether the house is worth living in. You just keep tending the furniture while the smoke fills the room. Here is your micro-pattern interrupt. Stop, breathe. Now tell me the last time you genuinely considered leaving that job, that friendship, that relationship. Did you make a clear-eyed decision to stay? Or did the thought of leaving produce a specific physical fear that made you retreat before you even finished the thought? Because decision and retreat feel remarkably similar from the inside. The difference is that one of them is chosen and one of them is flinched. Almost everything you have called loyalty in your life has been a flinch. And the people who benefit from your dependency, they know, not always consciously, but in the way that all organisms know when they have found a stable, predictable food source. The friend who takes more than they give knows you will keep calling because you always have. The employer who underpays you knows you will keep showing up because you are not quite desperate enough to quit, but not quite empowered enough to demand better. The partner who treats you as optional knows on some cellular level that your threshold for leaving is high enough that they will never actually have to meet it. Your loyalty, your supposed virtue, is their leverage. You handed them the tool they used to manage you, and then told yourself it made you noble. This is the mechanism. This is how it works. And now that you see it, you cannot unsee it. The recalibration, if you are brave enough to begin it, starts with a single merciless question. If I had options, would I still choose this? Not, can I tolerate this? Not, have I survived this so far? Would I actively, freely, with eyes open, choose this person, this place, this situation? If the answer requires more than 2 seconds of honest reflection, you already have your answer. The hesitation is the data. Building options is not disloyalty. It is the only path to genuine loyalty. When you develop skills that make you hireable elsewhere, you are not being disloyal to your employer. You are building the conditions under which your continued presence becomes a real choice rather than a forced one. When you cultivate friendships outside of your primary relationships, you are not hedging. You are refusing to make any single person your entire psychological infrastructure. When you build financial independence, you are not planning an exit. You are creating the conditions under which your love means something, because it is no longer the only thing keeping you warm. A person who stays with infinite options is loyal. A person who stays because they have none is just afraid. And afraid people, over decades, become something very specific. They become bitter. They become resentful. They develop a particular quality of quiet rage that they direct not at the situations that trapped them, but at the people who dared to leave. Because every person who leaves is a mirror. And what the mirror shows them is the option they never believed they had. You are not a loyal person. Not yet. You are a dependent person who has been told that your dependency is a personality trait to be proud of. The truth, the cold, clarifying truth, is that you have been romanticizing your own paralysis. Every day you stay in something that diminishes you and call it loyalty. You are not honoring anyone. You are betraying yourself. The most loyal thing you could ever do to yourself, and eventually to anyone worth your presence, is to build a life so rich in options that when you choose to stay, that choice actually means something. When you stay with everything, your staying is noise. When you stay with options, your staying is a statement. Stop calling your fear devotion. Stop calling your paralysis commitment. Stop calling your dependency love. The moment you have choices and still choose someone, That is the first moment loyalty has ever existed in your life. Everything before that was just the door you were too afraid to open.